Well, it was an extraordinary BBC cover-up over the interview, one of probably the most important TV interviews in our lifetime. It was an interview that shocked the world.
That's right. The journalist Martin Bashir has claimed now, we've seen in recent documents, that racism was behind the accusations that he used forged documents to secure that interview. That's
the interview, of course, with the Princess of Wales, Panorama, back in 1995, which you could argue changed the face of the royal family. Anyway, the revelations have come out with the release of 10,000 documents, 3,000 emails, and they've been released because of the assiduous campaigning by the investigative journalist Andy Webb.
Yeah, that's right. Let's not forget, more than £150,000 was spent by the BBC on legal fees trying to keep secret this cache of documents relating to this alleged cover-up of the controversy.
And a judge had to order the BBC to release the emails in a ruling last month following a freedom of information request from the journalist and filmmaker Andy Webb, who joins us now. Andy, morning to you. This is extraordinary, let alone the interview with Princess Diana, where she famously said, there was three in my marriage. She was referring to Camilla Parker Bowles, the suggestion that she was being spied on by MI5, that she was facing death threats, that Prince Charles had paid for an abortion for the nanny of William and Harry, Tiggy Leg Burke. What your investigative journalism has done is expose the extraordinary lengths the BBC went to cover up all of this.
Yeah, I think that is fair. I would also say, and this is not to pat myself on the head unnecessarily, but it was actually because of a document that was released to me in October of 2020 that the Bashir scandal became known in the first place. And I'll explain briefly what happened. I had put in another Freedom of Information request. In response to that, the BBC gave to me a document with this extraordinary allegation that it was actually Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, who had, for unknown, unexplained reasons, given Martin Bashir the raw ingredients for his famous forged bank statements. Now, at the very And it was as a result of that, once Earl Spencer realised this horrible allegation was out there, he went and got his own notes, which he'd kept for all these years, made them public, and we had Lord Dyson, and the scandal is what we know. Now, at the same time that the BBC published initially just to me that extraordinary allegation, we now know that they were sitting on a whole range of documents, and one of them in particular, an 8-page memo, walks you through the cover-up that took place back in 1996. So these emails that I finally, yesterday evening, got, I wanted to understand, if you like, let's call it the wireless chatter that was going on in the BBC at that time, late in 2020, that led to the release of the allegation and the suppression of these very, very damaging documents from a BBC perspective. So fascinatingly and sadly, if you like, for me is this. We know that has happened. We know that the BBC released that document X, but didn't release document Y. That is not in dispute. What is in dispute is actually who planned it, who carried this out. And that is what these emails hopefully will tell us once we get behind the massive redaction that exists within them.
Well, I say there's 10,000 documents, Andy, and there's a lot of black ink on them, and they'll say it's for reasons of privacy. But bear in mind, the BBC told us that all these documents were irrelevant anyway, which begs the question, why did they spend? I think you think the figure is closer to £250,000 to try to keep them private. But if there was this cover-up, it must have been at a very high level. How does this reflect on the current Director General, Tim Davie, who came in after Lord Hall, who was the head of news back in 1996, who said Martin Bashir had done a great scoop and had done nothing wrong?
Well, I would love to be able to ask Tim Davie that very question. I mean, what I can say is this, that there is clear evidence from emails that I've already seen, that at the centre, if you like, or close to the centre of our email circle is the Chief of Staff to the Director General, a chap called Phil Harold. Now, if Mr. Harold was acting as Chief of Staff with the blessing of his immediate boss, just one rung up, then that does raise enormous questions, I think, about Tim Davies' role in this. And also bear in mind, you referred there to the extraordinary amount of money that has been spent here. It was confirmed to me the day before yesterday, in fact, that the BBC have spent on external lawyers alone, just external lawyers, £151,000. For what it matters, they've spent about £14,000, they tell me, on actually storing these emails that they've sent me. But they've also been working on it. People have been working on it inside the BBC for getting on for 3 years. And I say, well, if you've spent 151,000 on your external lawyers and your 14 grand on your computers, I suspect you've spent the same again over 3 years internally, which brings you up to well over £250,000.
Andy, sorry, I was just going to say, it's probably no exaggeration to say that this interview arguably changed the course of history because of the trust that Diana had in the family. Any trust that was remaining at that point was gone after this because of the alleged falsehoods that were sold to her in order to get this interview. That could be one reason why you would pursue it. But also, I'm just interested, from a personal point of view, what it is that has motivated you to get to the bottom of this. Are there criminal actions at play here, do you think?
Well, it's, I'm a journalist, so all I do is try and find out stuff. But it is a fact that to unlawfully conceal information that ought to be given to anybody who requests it under freedom of information, to unlawfully conceal actually is a crime, and it actually has an unlimited fine. Now, as we speak, people at what's called the ICO, that's the body that administers the Freedom of Information Act, they are looking to see whether the BBC has, as I allege, committed an actual criminal offence. It's to me, you mentioned the way that it changed history. I also think you've got to bear in mind the effect this had on people like Prince William. When the Dyson report came out, that was the report, as I'm sure you know, that looked at this, and there was an inquiry, and he determined that the BBC had covered up. Prince William then went public with this very, very moving and heartfelt speech. It very fascinatingly, I think, really pointing the finger not so much at Bashir as the lone assassin, if you like, the rogue journalist. He was actually pointing the finger very, very much at the BBC. He was saying it was the BBC who had not asked the right questions. They had not tried to bottom out what had happened when it looked like something very, very bad had happened. And as a result of that, my understanding of Prince William's speech was that, as he put it, it led to the paranoia and so on that is, in his words, his mother suffered from in the final 18 months of her life.
Yeah.
And that really counts. That really does count. It's easy to point the finger at Martin Bashir as the rogue journalist and say, oh, God, that's terrible stuff. But we know that journalists occasionally go off the reservation. But when you get senior managers at the BBC, this corporation, which we're all supposed to trust and revere to an extent, if they know something's not right, but they haven't done anything about it, then that is not good.
And as recently as 2020, Martin Bashir is claiming that it is his race. Am I right, Andy, in these emails, saying it's because of my race, because of my background, that's why I'm under scrutiny for this?
He is saying that. I was fascinated to see that. It's a fascinating observation that he has. I've got to say, quite frankly, it is kind of tangential to what I've been looking at. Oddly enough, the BBC, I think, remarkably and unbelievably, have claimed that these whole 10,000 pages of documents are all of them irrelevant. Now, as it happens, one could argue that Martin Bashir's claim there that he got on the wrong side of some people for the wrong reasons. Well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. You could actually claim that that is irrelevant to what I've been seeking. But I tell you what, there's a lot of stuff in there that is by no means irrelevant. By no means.
OK,
Andy, thanks so
Andy.
much for joining us, and congratulations and well done for pursuing it. You're a credit to the journalistic profession. That's Andy Webb, freelance journalist.
Yeah.
In a statement, the BBC said any suggestion it acted in bad faith was simply wrong.
That's right. They said a bit more than that. Throughout this process, we have taken our responsibilities to comply with the directions of the tribunal extremely seriously. Therefore, we have today released approximately 3,000 documents, some 10,000 pages, to Mr Webb. This latest disclosure includes many hundreds of pages of duplicates and material that was not related to the 1995 panorama, but was nevertheless caught by the electronic searches.